Welcome to another deep dive, and this time we're going deep into the world of short, scary
Oh,
stories.
nice.
It's that kind of world that kind of gives you the chills, but you kind of can't look away either, right?
Yeah.
We've got two standalone stories here,
Okay.
Bloody Teddy and Shaking Up, and a collection of 6 more from a blog.
Wow.
This blog is called, and I love this, My Favorite Short Scary Stories.
Okay.
So I guess what I'm most curious about is why are these bite-sized terrors? Why do they have such power over us? What makes them so effective?
Well, I think that's the fascinating thing about short horror.
Yeah.
They're like these perfectly aimed darts.
Mhm.
They hit our deepest fears with surgical precision.
Yeah, I totally agree. So let's start with Bloody Teddy. This is a story about Leah.
Okay.
She's a lonely girl and finds an abandoned teddy bear. And of course, then she meets, some tragic end.
Wow.
That's kind of a classic horror setup.
Yeah. It does seem almost innocent at first,
Right.
but that's how horror, I think, often lures us in. With that sense of false security.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
But what's interesting here is, Leah's loneliness, her desperate desire for connection.
Right.
It becomes a catalyst for something truly, truly dark.
And it's not just that she dies, right? It's that she becomes a vengeful ghost.
Oh, wow.
And she possesses this teddy bear.
Oh.
And guess what her target is?
People with lots of friends.
That's exactly it.
Wow.
And so B Teddy becomes Bloody Teddy.
Right.
And she enacts this very specific kind of revenge on people. And the story ends, of course, on a cliffhanger.
Oh.
So it leaves us to imagine all the carnage to come.
Oh, gosh.
It makes you wonder, though, right?
Yeah.
Is this just a ghost story?
Right.
Or is it tapping into something deeper,
Yeah.
like social isolation, the fear of being left behind in a world where connection is everything,
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point. I think that's why horror really resonates so deeply,
Right.
It often reflects our own societal anxieties, our
Yeah.
unspoken fears.
Yeah, exactly. So our next story, Shaking Up. This takes us to a desolate road in India. Oh, just that image,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
That setting,
Yeah.
It's just designed to make you shiver.
Right.
So we've got this young man, and he encounters this old man who warns him about the ghost of Jivan Lal.
Hmm.
Now, Jivan Lal was a trader who was murdered on that very road.
Mhm.
And you might think, oh, that's a standard haunted road trope.
Oh, yeah.
But then you realize that the old man, he isn't just some helpful bystander.
Ugh.
He's actively stoking this young man's fear,
Oh.
almost taking pleasure in it. Those shaking leaves, the way he describes Jivan Lal's tragic fate. It's like he's setting a stage. He's setting a stage for something. And then, of course, the stage is set for a truly shocking reveal. The old man is Jivan Lal's ghost,
Oh, wow.
trapped in this horrifying loop of revenge, mistaking every traveler for his murderer.
Oh, man. Yeah.
And it's not just a twist ending, It's a
Right.
commentary on the cyclical nature of violence,
Mhm.
the way trauma lingers even beyond death.
Yeah.
And it makes you question those gut feelings that we often ignore.
Yeah. Yeah.
What if that sense of unease, what if that's actually a warning?
It could be.
Right.
Yeah.
So, okay, time to shift gears a bit.
Okay.
We've got this collection of 6 stories from a blog called, again, My Favorite Short Scary Stories.
Right.
And the author, Zoya Marlin, she's a high school student,
Oh, wow.
which makes me even more curious about what she finds terrifying.
Yeah. It's a reminder that horror is subjective, right? Yeah. I mean, what chills a high schooler might be totally different from what scares, a seasoned horror aficionado.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's often a rawness, right?
Yeah.
An immediacy to the fears that we experience in our younger years. Totally. Absolutely. So her first story, Who's in My Bed, this plays on a fear I think most of us can relate to.
Okay.
So we have a father. He goes to check on his son,
Yeah.
and he finds him acting strangely with this creepy grin.
Whoa.
And then the son asks him to check under the bed.
Oh, I can already feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing up.
Oh, yeah.
It's the classic, under the bed.
Yeah.
Fear, but amplified tenfold.
Right. And what parent hasn't imagined something lurking in the shadows of their child's room?
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Totally.
So what the father finds is truly terrifying. It's his real son hiding under the bed.
What?
Terrified. The kid in the bed is an imposter.
Oh my God.
It's not just a jump scare, it's a violation, right? It's this violation of that sense of safety that we expect in our own homes, especially for our children.
Yeah, it's like a nightmare come to life.
Right.
The fear of losing your child, of not recognizing them,
Right.
of something sinister just invading your most sacred space.
Exactly. Exactly. So now story number 2, the cabin. This takes us to a more isolated setting.
Okay.
Which is, horror 101. A lost hiker finds an abandoned cabin and seeks shelter.
Uh-huh.
It's filled with these portraits of smiling people that seem to watch his every move.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So you've got isolation and this unsettling atmosphere. That's a recipe for some classic horror tropes.
It is, but tropes work because they tap into our primal fears.
Right.
We're hardwired to be wary of the unknown, of places that feel off.
Absolutely, yeah. And the way those portraits are described, it's like they hold some kind of power over him. But here's where the story gets really interesting. When the hiker wakes up, the portraits are gone, replaced by windows.
Oh, that's a brilliant touch.
Right.
Yeah. So is the cabin somehow alive,
Exactly.
or was it all in the hiker's head?
Right.
It's that ambiguity, that lingering doubt that just makes the story so effective.
Right.
It plays on the fear of losing our grip on reality.
Exactly. It makes you question, like, was it real or not?
Yeah.
Right.
Totally.
And then we have the red wristband set in a hospital, which, of course, a place that already carries a certain weight of fear and mortality. So we have a doctor encounters a patient in the elevator, nothing unusual, until he notices the man behind them trying to get on.
And the man has a red wristband.
Yes, you got it. The man trying to get on has a red wristband indicating he's deceased.
Oh.
And the doctor just performed surgery on him the night before.
Oh my.
So it's a classic ghost story set up, but it's the simplicity, right?
Yeah.
The stark image of that red wristband that makes it so chilling.
Yeah. And then that final reveal.
Yeah.
That the woman in the elevator also has a red wristband.
Oh.
It's like a punch to the gut.
Right.
Yeah.
That close call with death, right?
Yeah.
The realization that you might have been sharing space with a ghost, it's enough to make anyone check their pulse.
Right.
Okay, let's talk about White with Red A. A man moves into an apartment building. He's warned to avoid the door with no number. But, of course, curiosity always gets the better of us, right?
Right.
So he peeks.
Of course he does. Forbidden knowledge.
Yeah.
That's another classic horror trope, right?
Right.
We're drawn to the things we're told to avoid.
Yeah.
So what's behind that door?
Yeah.
Who is this pale woman he sees through the keyhole?
Yeah.
It's like a slow burn of suspense.
Yeah, and the ending with the keyhole covered in red, the revelation about the couple who lived there, the husband who killed his wife.
Yeah.
It leaves you with so many questions.
Yeah.
Like, what did the man actually see?
Oh.
Was it a ghost? Or something even more sinister?
Oh. It's like the story is like planting a seed of fear in your mind.
Right.
And that seed just continues to grow long after you've finished reading.
Right, yeah.
Makes you question everything you see.
Yeah.
Everything you think you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Zoya definitely knows how to play on our anxieties.
Yeah.
So, a mother's call. A girl hears her mother calling her down for dinner, but then...
Wait, I'm sensing a twist here.
Okay.
It's not her real mother calling, is it?
You're right.
Okay.
It's her mother, but acting strangely, warning her not to come downstairs because she heard it too.
Oh.
So it's that double layer of fear, right?
Right.
Someone or something is impersonating her mother, and the real mother's trapped, unable to protect her daughter.
Oh gosh. It goes beyond a simple jump scare, doesn't it?
Right.
It's about the breakdown of trust, the fear of losing the people we love most, of not being able to protect them.
Absolutely. And finally, we have Zoe's last story, a crowded airport. This taps into a very modern anxiety.
Oh, yeah.
Being surrounded by strangers, the feeling of vulnerability in a place where you're supposed to feel safe.
Right. airports are already liminal spaces,
Right.
full of anticipation and uncertainty.
Right.
And you add a touch of the supernatural, and it becomes a breeding ground for paranoia.
Exactly. So our protagonist is sitting in the airport. He notices a man staring intently at him, and then the man approaches and whispers a chilling warning, "Don't go on that flight," and then vanishes.
Wow, that's the kind of encounter that would stay with you.
Right. The
Yeah.
ambiguity, the lack of explanation, it's incredibly unsettling.
It is.
And the story ends there, leaving us to wonder, what might have happened if he heeded the warning. It plays on that fear of the unknown, the what ifs that can haunt us long after a close call.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Zoe's stories are full of these open endings.
Right. Yeah.
These unanswered questions. It's like she's inviting us to become part of the story.
Yeah.
To fill in the blanks with our own fears and anxieties.
Right. It's like she gives us the frame and then we fill in the picture.
Right. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, she really does. So it seems like there's more to these stories than just jump scares and creepy twists. They're tapping into something deeper, some primal fears that we all share.
You're right. Even though these stories are so different in setting and style,
Yeah.
there are some common threads running through them.
So let's start with the obvious one. Loneliness and isolation. Bloody Teddy and The Cabin both feature, characters who are alone, vulnerable, and ultimately preyed upon by something sinister.
Yeah, it's almost as if the absence of human connection
Right.
creates a space for fear to fester and grow.
Right. Yeah.
And in a world where we're constantly bombarded with messages about the importance of connection,
Right.
these stories feel particularly relevant.
They do. Then there's the theme of revenge, especially in Bloody Teddy and Shaking Up.
Mhm.
Both stories feature ghosts who are driven by a desire for retribution.
Yeah,
But it's not a simple case of good versus evil.
exactly. The lines are blurred.
Right.
Leah, the ghost in Bloody Teddy, is both a victim and a perpetrator.
Right.
And Jevon Law, the vengeful spirit in Shaking Up, is trapped in this cycle of violence that just seems to have no end.
Right.
It raises questions about the nature of justice, the lasting impact of trauma, and whether true peace is ever possible after such profound loss.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of blurred lines, we can't forget the element of deception and the uncanny.
Yeah.
Stories like "Who's in my bed?" "The red wristband," and "A mother's call" all play on this fear of the familiar becoming strange, of not being able to trust our own senses.
Yeah, it's that feeling of the ground shifting beneath your feet, right?
Right.
The realization that the world might not be as stable and predictable as we like to think.
Right.
And it's particularly unsettling when it happens within the supposed safety of our own homes,
Right.
with the people we love most.
Right, exactly. And finally, there's that overarching fear of the unknown, that sense of dread that permeates all of these stories. The mysterious cabin, the deserted road, the crowded airport, they all represent spaces where anything could happen,
Right.
where the rules of reality seem to bend and break.
Yeah, it's that feeling of not knowing what's lurking around the corner.
Right.
What's hiding in the shadows.
Yeah.
The fear of the things we can't see or explain. And in a world where we're constantly bombarded with information and stimulation, that fear of the unknown can feel particularly potent.
I agree. So we've got these themes, these primal fears that connect these stories. But what about the techniques?
Yeah.
How are these authors crafting such effective horror in such a limited space?
Well, they're masters of economy.
Right.
They're using every word, every detail to build suspense and create a sense of unease.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Take, for instance, Bloody Teddy, for example.
Right.
That story ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Leaving us to imagine what happens next. It's a simple technique, but it's incredibly effective. It keeps us hooked, but also leaves us with a lingering sense of dread.
Yeah, and the foreshadowing in Shaking Up is masterful.
Yeah.
The shaking leaves, the old man's cryptic warnings, they all build up to that shocking reveal, but in a way that feels both surprising and inevitable.
Yeah.
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 It's like they're planting clues along the way.
Right. Yeah.
inviting us to solve the mystery,
Right.
even as they're leading us down a path of terror.
Exactly. Exactly. And then there are the unexpected twists and shocking endings, like in Who's in My Bed
Uh-huh.
and the red wristband.
Yeah.
Those moments catch us off guard, leaving us with that feeling of, did that really just happen?
Right. Those twists are so effective because they subvert our expectations.
Right.
We think we know where the story is going,
Right.
and then bam, the rug is pulled out from under us.
Yeah. And of course we can't forget the imagery, the vivid details that bring these stories to life.
Right.
The creepy portraits in the cabin, the bloody keyhole in white with red. Those images are what make those stories stick with you long after you've finished reading them.
Yeah, it's about creating a sensory experience.
Yeah.
Drawing the reader into the world of the story through vivid. There are lots of theories out there, but I think at its core, it comes down to this human need to kind of confront our fears, but in a safe environment.
Yeah.
Short horror stories give us that opportunity. They let us kind of explore that darker side
Yeah.
of human nature, right? To experience that thrill of danger and the unknown without actually putting ourselves at risk.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like a controlled experiment in a way to kind of test our own limits.
Right.
And just see how we react to fear. And maybe, just maybe, by face of those fears in fiction, we can learn to better cope with the real anxieties and uncertainties of life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think horror can be cathartic. It
Yeah.
allows us to process our anxieties, to confront the things that scare us, and to emerge on the other side,
Right.
feeling a little bit braver, a little bit more resilient.
And let's not forget the pure entertainment value.
Yeah.
A well-crafted horror story, it can be a thrilling, edge-of-your-seat experience.
Yeah.
It's a chance to kind of escape from the mundane,
Yeah.
to immerse ourselves in a world of suspense and the unknown. It's like a roller coaster ride for the mind.
It is. And just like a roller coaster, we know we're ultimately safe.
Right, right.
And that knowledge is what allows us to enjoy the ride, to embrace the fear without becoming overwhelmed by it.
So we've reached the end of our deep dive into these terrifying tales. We've explored the themes, the techniques, the psychology of fear, but the conversation doesn't have to end here, does it?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'm curious, what resonated with you the most? Which story kind of tapped into your deepest fears?
Right.
And what did you learn about yourself through this exploration of horror?
Right, right. Maybe you'll be inspired to seek out more short horror stories. There's a whole world of chilling tales out there just waiting to be discovered.
And who knows, maybe you'll even be inspired to write your own. After all, everyone has a story to tell.
Right.
And sometimes those most terrifying stories are the ones that come from our own imaginations.
Well said. Well, dear listener, we've reached the end of our journey into the heart of darkness. We hope you enjoyed the ride and maybe even learned a thing or two about the power of fear and the allure of the unknown.
Keep reading, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep that nightlight burning bright.
Until next time, sweet dreams.